Greetings, class. Today we embark on what I consider one of the most crucial lessons in our study of Revelation. As we begin our 8th session, I want to emphasize that we still haven't opened the first page of Revelation itself, and this is entirely intentional. The book of Revelation cannot be properly understood without first mastering its Old Testament foundation, particularly the prophetic framework established in the book of Daniel. Over the past 7 videos, we've been planting seeds of understanding, examining the interconnected prophecies that span from Daniel's time in Babylon through to the establishment of Christ's eternal kingdom. Tonight, we begin to harvest those seeds as we explore the most detailed and comprehensive prophecy in the entire Old Testament, Daniel chapters 10 through 12. Before we dive into our primary text, let me address what I believe is the greatest obstacle to understanding prophetic literature in general and Revelation in particular. We, as modern Christians, are woefully unfamiliar with the circumstances of the people to whom these books were originally given. The book of Revelation was written to first-century Christians who were steeped in Old Testament scripture, who understood the cultural and historical context of Jewish apocalyptic literature, and who lived under the shadow of the Roman Empire. We have been raised, if we're honest, with shameful unfamiliarity with Old Testament scriptures. This isn't meant as condemnation, but as recognition of reality. The Old Testament is a substantial work, and without proper grounding in its prophetic framework, we inevitably misinterpret the New Testament's prophetic books. What I'm providing tonight is essential background information that will allow the connections between Daniel and Revelation to crystallize in your minds. Reviewing the prophetic framework. Let me quickly review the foundational material we've covered. We began with Daniel chapter 2 and Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the great statue. We saw how a stone cut without hands struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay, crushing all 4 kingdoms represented by the statue's components. That stone became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. This, I believe, represents the church, not merely a localized kingdom like the Roman Empire, but a universal kingdom that would encompass all nations. Daniel 2:44 tells us that in the days of those kings, referring to the succession of earthly kingdoms represented by Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed. This kingdom would not be conquered or left to another people, but would itself endure forever while crushing and putting an end to all the earthly kingdoms that preceded it. We connected this with Isaiah's prophecy in chapter 2, verse 2, where the prophet declared that in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains and will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. The parallel is unmistakable. Both prophets speak of a great mountain that fills the earth, established after the rise and fall of earthly kingdoms. Moving to Daniel 7, we encountered the vision of the 4 great beasts and the crucial passage about one like a son of man who came with the clouds of heaven to the Ancient of Days. To this figure was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and languages might serve him. His dominion was described as an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. The interpretation of this vision introduces us to a critical concept, the saints of the Most High. These saints would receive the kingdom and possess it forever, but only after being overpowered by the horn for time, times, and half a time. The text specifically states that the sovereignty, dominion, and greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. Note carefully that phrase, the people of the saints. Not all the saints, but the people from among the saints. This distinction will prove crucial as we develop our understanding of how these prophecies found their fulfillment in the first century. Daniel 8, the detailed interlude. Daniel 8 provides us with remarkable specificity, focusing exclusively on the 2nd and 3rd kingdoms, Medo-Persia and Greece. Here we encounter the prophecy of the small horn that grew great toward the south, east, and the beautiful land. This horn caused some of the host of heaven and some of the stars to fall to earth, removed the regular sacrifice, and threw down the sanctuary. The angel's explanation is precise. This desolation would last for 2,300 evenings and mornings, after which the sanctuary would be properly restored. Historical records confirm that Antiochus IV Epiphanes fulfilled this prophecy between 168 and 164 BC when he suspended the daily sacrifice, slaughtered a pig on the altar, and persecuted the Jews. The restoration of the temple is celebrated to this day in the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. This historical fulfillment is crucial because it demonstrates that Daniel's prophecies have precise, literal fulfillments in real history. We're not dealing with vague symbols that can be spiritualized away, but with specific predictions that were fulfilled exactly as prophesied. Daniel 9, the 70 weeks. Daniel 9 presents us with the famous prophecy of the 70 weeks, which provides a precise chronological framework leading to the coming of Messiah. The prophecy declares that 70 weeks are decreed for Daniel's people and holy city to finish transgression, make an end of sin, make atonement for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and anoint the most holy place. The prophecy specifies that from the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah there would be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, after which Messiah would be cut off and have nothing. Then the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Notice the sequence. First comes the Messiah, then comes destruction. This isn't the end of the world, it's the end of the old covenant system. The prophecy speaks of putting a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out. This language of abomination and desolation appears again in Jesus' discourse in Matthew 24, where he explicitly refers to the abomination of desolation which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet. Jesus places this fulfillment in his own generation, not in some distant future. Daniel 10-12, the climactic prophecy. Now we come to the heart of our lesson, Daniel chapters 10 through 12. These 3 chapters comprise a single, unified prophecy, the longest and most detailed prophetic passage in the entire Old Testament. There should be no chapter divisions here, as they represent one continuous revelation about one coherent set of events within a single time frame. The prophecy begins in chapter 10 with the appearance of a terrifying figure in linen by the river. This being, whom I believe represents the pre-incarnate Christ, comes to give Daniel understanding of what will happen to his people in the latter days. Note carefully, not to all peoples, not to the entire world, but specifically to Daniel's people, the Jews, in the days yet future, from Daniel's perspective. The detailed historical prophecy. Daniel 11 unfolds with breathtaking precision, detailing the rise and fall of kingdoms from Daniel's time forward. Beginning with the remaining kings of Persia, the prophecy moves through Alexander the Great's conquest of the Persian Empire, his early death, and the division of his kingdom among 4 generals. The text then focuses intensively on the conflicts between the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt, the king of the south, and the Seleucid kingdom of Syria, the king of the north. What makes this prophecy so remarkable is its molecular level detail. Every verse from Daniel 11:1 to 35 can be matched with specific historical events, rulers, battles, and political machinations that occurred in the intertestamental period. The prophecy describes palace intrigue, military campaigns, dynastic marriages, betrayals, and political alliances with such precision that skeptical scholars have argued it must have been written after the events occurred. But here's what's crucial for our understanding of Revelation. This detailed historical prophecy doesn't end with the intertestamental period. Beginning in verse 36, the focus shifts to events that would occur after the coming of Messiah during the Roman period. The transition to the Roman period. The latter portion of Daniel 11 describes a king who will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will speak monstrous things against the God of gods. This figure appears during the time of the 4th kingdom, Rome, and his actions lead directly to the climactic events described in chapter 12. Some scholars, following the insights of Philip Morrow in his seminal work, The 70 Weeks in the Great Tribulation, identify this king with Herod the Great, whose megalomaniacal tendencies and persecution of the Jewish people fit the prophetic description. Others see references to various Roman emperors or military commanders. What's clear is that we've moved beyond the Greek period into the Roman era, the time when Messiah would come and establish his kingdom. Daniel 12, the time of the end. Chapter 12 opens with the declaration, "at that time," referring to the time period just described in chapter 11. Michael, the great prince, will arise, and there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. But here's the crucial point. Daniel's people, those whose names are written in the book, will be rescued. This language should sound familiar. Jesus uses virtually identical terminology in Matthew 24:21 when he speaks of a great tribulation such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. Jesus explicitly connects this tribulation to Daniel's prophecy and places its fulfillment in his own generation. Time, times, and half a time. One of the most significant elements linking Daniel to Revelation is the recurring time period of time, times, and half a time, 3.5 years, or 1,260 days. This period appears in Daniel 7:25, Daniel 12:7, and multiple times in Revelation. In each context, it represents a period of intense persecution followed by deliverance. In Daniel 12:7, this time period is specifically connected to the shattering of the power of the holy people. When that shattering is complete, all the events foretold by Daniel will be fulfilled. This isn't about the end of the physical universe. It's about the end of the Old Covenant age and the full establishment of the New Covenant kingdom. The specific time markers. Daniel 12 concludes with even more specific time markers. 1,290 days and 1,335 days. Many commentators treat these as symbolic, but I believe we should take them as literally as we take the 2,300 days of Daniel 8, which found precise historical fulfillment in the Maccabean period. From the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits and reaches the 1,335 days. These specific numbers suggest actual historical events with definite beginning and ending points. The historical evidence suggests these time periods found their fulfillment in the events surrounding the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The Roman armies under Cestius Gallus first threatened Jerusalem, then withdrew, allowing Christians to flee to Pella in accordance with Jesus' warning. The final siege under Vespasian and Titus lasted approximately the period specified in Daniel's prophecy. The connection to Josephus Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian who witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem, provides crucial testimony about these events. In his preface to the Wars of the Jews, he writes that Jerusalem had arrived at a higher degree of felicity than any other city under the Roman government, and yet at last fell into the sorest of calamities. He declares that the misfortunes of all men from the beginning of the world, if they be compared to these of the Jews, are not so considerable as they were. This testimony from an eyewitness confirms the unprecedented nature of the judgment that fell on Jerusalem, precisely as Daniel and Jesus had prophesied. The destruction was so complete that the daily sacrifice ceased forever, the temple was demolished, and the entire sacrificial system of the Old Covenant came to an end. The theological significance. What we see in Daniel is the grand finale of Old Testament prophecy. The prophet foretells the end of the temple, the sanctuary, the daily sacrifice, and the city of Jerusalem. Never again would the Mosaic law be practiced as it had been for over a millennium. The Old Covenant ended in that generation, and the New Covenant was fully established. The Jews were no longer the chosen people of God in the exclusive sense they had been under the Old Covenant. They had been Daniel's people because they were God's covenant people, but now the kingdom was open to all nations. Some of those Jewish saints became the first fruits of the New Covenant community, but the special covenant status of ethnic Israel came to an end with the destruction of Jerusalem. Preparing for Revelation. This brings us to the threshold of understanding Revelation. Christianity is now open to all nations under the new covenant. An eternal kingdom has been established, and Christians are God's chosen people. Every word of Daniel's prophecies was fulfilled in the generation Jesus said they would be fulfilled. Revelation will provide the magnificent, detailed account of how these prophecies found their fulfillment. Where Daniel gives us the broad framework, Revelation will show us the spiritual dimensions of these same events. The book will describe in vivid apocalyptic imagery the fall of Jerusalem, the end of the Old Covenant age, and the triumph of Christ's kingdom. Understanding this background is crucial because Revelation is not about our future, it's about the future of those to whom it was originally written. It concerns the first century Christians in Asia Minor and their relationship to the climactic events that were shortly to come to pass in their time. Rotz, the interpretive principle. The interpretive principle we must follow is this: prophetic symbols have real-world fulfillments. They are not symbols of symbols or figures of figures. They are prophecies of forthcoming history that can be verified through historical investigation. Daniel proves this principle through the precise fulfillment of his predictions about the succession of world empires and the specific events of the intertestamental period. Just as Daniel's prophecies about Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and the beginning of the Roman period were fulfilled with historical precision, so his prophecies about the end of the Old Covenant age were fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Revelation provides the spiritual commentary on these same events, showing us how the victory of Christ's kingdom was accomplished through the judgment on apostate Judaism and the persecution of the early church. Conclusion and looking forward. As we conclude today's lesson, I want you to see the magnificent connections between Daniel and the New Testament. The stone cut without hands has become the great mountain filling the earth. The Son of Man has received his kingdom from the Ancient of Days. The saints have taken possession of the everlasting kingdom after their time of tribulation. When we finally open the book of Revelation in our upcoming lessons, we'll discover that John is providing the detailed, vivid account of how Daniel's prophecies reached their fulfillment. The 1,260 days that appear throughout Revelation correspond to the time, times, and half a time of Daniel. The beast that makes war on the saints is the same power that wore down the saints of the Most High in Daniel's vision. Next week, we'll examine Matthew 23 and 24, where Jesus himself provides the crucial link between Daniel's prophecies and their first century fulfillment. Jesus explicitly tells his disciples that the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel would occur in their generation, and that all the things he prophesied would take place before that generation passed away. I challenge you to read Matthew 23 and 24 at least 6 times before our next meeting. These chapters will serve as the foundation upon which we'll build our understanding of Revelation. The groundwork we've laid tonight with Daniel will support the superstructure of understanding we'll construct as we finally enter John's magnificent apocalyptic vision. Remember, the goal is not merely intellectual comprehension, but spiritual understanding. These prophecies were fulfilled to demonstrate God's faithfulness to his word and to show the triumph of Christ's kingdom over all earthly powers. As we study them, we gain confidence in God's sovereignty over history and his ultimate victory over all opposition to his purposes. The seeds we've planted over these 8 weeks are now sprouting. Soon we'll see the full harvest of understanding as all these prophetic threads weave together into the magnificent tapestry that is the book of Revelation. Don't worry, we will get to the book of Revelation specifically soon, but it is so important to understanding that we lay down the Old Testament prophetic foundation. I read all the comments and look forward to seeing more. Please like and share this video if it has blessed you.